Hey, Dave Bruce here on an episode of Chordplay, and it's the Chords of Y&T. And once again, I have to admit that I was really shocked and impressed that after the Dickey Betts Three-For-All lesson, I noticed 4 requests for Y&T on the same day. And I have seen requests for Y&T and to feature, Dave Meniketti. And it was just kind of a trickle, like one every, 2 or 3 months. But then when I saw 4 on the same day attached to the same Three-For-All lesson, I thought, okay, I think it's time to finally feature Y&T. And, after doing some research and kind of digging into their music, I had no idea that Y&T technically started as Yesterday and Today, and they've been around since 1974. That blew my mind. I thought they were like an 80s band, but technically Y&T used to be known as Yesterday and Today. They had a couple albums that came out like in the mid to late 70s, and then they changed and shortened their name to Y&T. And when I was a teenager, I thought Y&T stood for Young and Tough, but it's actually Yesterday and Today. I had no idea. So as I learned in the research for this lesson, Dave Meniketti and Y&T's been around since, 1974. And I'd never heard, the 2 albums that they released, in the mid to late 70s. The self-titled, debut, and then also the album Struck Down. Those were brand new on my radar. I was like, I had no idea that those even existed. So I did go back and listen, to their early material, which was brand new to me. And then I went through every, studio album, and they've continued to release, music into the 2000s. I think they had an album from 2010, most recently. But Dave's a very interesting guitarist. His rhythm works very driving and rocking, and his lead works, very expressive too. Lots of these intense, bending and vibrato, phrases and stuff. It almost reminds me of John Sykes a little bit. And really, Y&T does have a little bit of a Thin Lizzy kind of feel, like with some of the riffs and some of the songs. It kind of reminds me of Thin Lizzy, just a little bit. But a great band. And once again, thank you for the requests, because I had no idea that there was anything from the 70s, from Y&T, and there is. I do recommend, if you're a Y&T fan or if you're brand new to this group, go back and listen to where they started, because it's really rocking. There's a lot of effects. I know it's lots of phaser and I think flanger and maybe some wah and some stuff in there, chorus. And you can hear, like it's prominent effects. So you have to think, mid to late 70s, probably some MXR and some stuff, in the mix. But it is really cool to go back and see where they started, and then you kind of notice this change and kind of shift. But Dave's rhythm playing was always dynamite, even back in the early days. Or the opening, that was the song Pleasure in My Heart, which is from the Struck Down album, technically their second album from 1978, I believe. And there is a phase 90 being used, and I did flash that image, with the settings that I used to kind of get that phase tone, which is pretty close to the album. And the big thing I noticed, right off the bat when I heard the song, is it reminds me of a certain song from a certain band from the same year, 1978. But this riff loosely reminds me of Little Dreamer by Van Halen. Even though Eddie, was tuned down a half step for Little Dreamer, it does follow the same chord progression. And Dave is basically, kind of targeting this B minor 7, and then he moves it to an F sharp minor 7, like a partial chord. And since both of those albums, I think actually Van Halen 1 came out before Struck Down. It was a matter of months, like 4 or 5 months later. But you have to think of when they were recorded. I think it's just a coincidence. I don't think Dave actually ripped off Little Dreamer. I think they just happened to be hitting the same type of riff. Because you have to think of when it was recorded, sometime probably late 77, maybe early 78. And, maybe Dave did hear, Little Dreamer, but I doubt it because the time, it was just very tight as far as the time frame. I think it was just a coincidence. But anyway, the riff is like this. So right there you can see we're playing B minor 7 and we're separating this partial, kind of double stop from the root of the chord, and you can hear him kind of going back and forth right there. And then go down to F sharp minor 7 and do the same thing. And that definitely reminds me of Little Dreamer. And then the last time, basically, it's like this little single note riff, and then just end on a B minor bar chord. And then the verse starts right there. The cool riff, and I love that kind of Van Halen connection. The Phase 90 probably does help, kind of give it that Van Halen vibe. But once again, I think that's just a coincidence. I think Dave and Eddie just happened to tap into the same, progression. Because Little Dreamer is technically a little bit different. But Dave definitely locked into almost this Van Halen kind of vibe. Really cool. Okay, next up we have the song Knock You Out, which is from the Earthshaker album, and this is pretty cool. Something like this. Right there, we're basically playing this single note riff on the low E right here, and then just go to an E minor bar chord right there, and then do that same single note riff, and then a D power chord, or D major chord, and then you're gonna almost finish that single note riff, but you want to stop on F sharp at the end. And then you'll hear this kind of wiggled C power chord to a D, and you're wiggling it with vibrato there. And then back to that E minor chord. So you're just kind of moving between that C power chord and D. And then back to that E minor. Okay, up next is Don't Stop Runnin', which is from the In Rock We Trust album, and it's something like this. We're starting with this A power chord, and then we're kind of flirting with the sus2 there, that B note, and then you're going to hear the root note change. So we're moving from A to F sharp to E, and it's something like this. And then you're going to go to that F sharp right there. And then an E. And then go to a D power chord with the open A, like that big, kind of massive D5. D5 over A, I guess. And then loop all that. And the last time you got the this little single note riff. And it goes right in the verse right there, and it shifts to F sharp. Cool song. Next up we got the song Contagious from the album Contagious, which is that one right there. And it's something like this. Really cool. So once again, we're kind of flirting with that B minor 7 again, but he's not really fretting it that way. I believe he's actually just using his index finger. So watch out for that A string, because you don't want that E note in there. You want to separate, you know, the double stop from the root, like that. And then you're going to reach up here and grab this kind of little piece of E sus4, and then go to E. And then you're going to basically use that B root and walk down with these double stops. Like that. And you'll hear a second guitar that's just pedaling that B note the whole time. So you can kind of fake, you know, both guitar parts with just one guitar. Something like this. I'm letting that B power chord ring, but I'm also kind of hitting that B root note too. So, you know, I'm kind of, you know, mixing those two parts together. Single note riff. It kind of reminds me of Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, just a little bit. It's not exact, but it's reminiscent of that. And that's and then that keeps going, and then you hear that riff come back in, you know, mixed with that. I love riffs like that, though. It just kind of hits you in the face, you know, where it's like, yeah, you know, listen to that. Right up next is the song L.A. Rocks, which is also from the Contagious album, and it's something like this. So right there, you know, we've got a kind of a 12th fret slide, or maybe like around the 14th fret, but just slide down the low E string. And then we're hitting this partial E major to like the sus4 of E, something like this. And then you hear this. So it's kind of like a little piece of B major, but you're also still kind of playing with that A right there. And then right there, kind of playing like a little piece of D major, and that sus4 with that G note. And it's also kind of using like slight pinch harmonics, you know, on those notes. They're not all squeals, but you can kind of hear it's kind of chirpy. And so the second time you've got right there on the D string, you're going to go from G to F sharp and then slide up to A. And last time, just basically roll down to that E note and then just end on a power chord. And that's it. Cool song though, and LA does rock. Next is the song Rescue Me, which is also from the Earthshaker album. You can see I've switched to an acoustic guitar, and it has this mysterious and haunting, you know, kind of sequence of chords, and I love chord progressions like this. Something like this. way too fast. It's really slow. That might be more, you know, the right tempo. But we're basically grabbing this A minor add 9 right here, and it's just part of that chord. So it's the D, the G, and the B strings of, you know, A minor add 9. Like that. Then you're going to move down to this partial G and grab the high E string open up there. And that's going to be a G6 technically, and that high E string is the 6th of G. Then you want to flip that little fingering right there, and you're going to grab this, and that's going to be an F sharp sus4 flat 5. You know, very mysterious and haunting right there. I love that. And then you're going to move to this, and that's an F sharp 11. And then you're going to move to this, and that's basically E augmented, and then you're going to open up that B string, and it kind of, you know, implies E major. Like that. So there's E augmented, but then you hear that open B string. Like that. And you've got this. Guitar part too, and I love, you know, those kind of just spooky chord sequences like that. Last example is the song most of you are probably waiting for. This is Summertime Girls, you know, very popular song, arguably Y&T's most popular song, and it's in the key of E, and it's something like this. Once again, a big slide on the low E string down, and then we're playing this inversion. It's technically an E over G sharp. You know, it's part of an E chord. But just think of that kind of 70s chord shape, or that inversion shape, because we're going to come down, you know, big low E open, grab that E over G sharp, and then go down to a partial B right there. Hit that low E, and then move from that partial B to partial A. And then an A power chord to B power chord. Last time, just let that A power chord ring. You know, timeless song. And I totally remember watching MTV with my sister and watching, you know, the Summertime Girls video. I think we had it on like a mixtape that we'd made. And we watched that tape, you know, over and over and over. So I've seen that music video hundreds and hundreds of times. And that riff, you know, just kind of grabs you. It's like, yeah. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Y&T. And once again, I want to thank everybody for the requests, because you literally steered me in a direction that I had on the back burner. I mean, I had Y&T on my kind of master list or whatever, but I wasn't really ready to feature them yet. But when I saw those requests come in, and I thought, you know what, some of those people have been waiting for months and months, if not, you know, half a year or whatever. I thought, okay, it's finally time to do this, and I just dove in the way that I have, you know, with some other artists and guitarists on this channel, and I had fun. You know, it was like, man, I didn't know they had 2 albums in the 70s. There were songs I'd never heard, you know, riffs I'd never, you know, tried to play before. So it was a good challenge for me. It definitely shook things up, where it was like, yeah, you know, Y&T. Leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.